Hey everyone, this is Scott, Great Scott on most forums I'm on. And here I have my Element Enduro, also known as Team Associated, kit build. I've been working on this guy for months. I've been in school, and of course life's just happened. Of course right now there's a lot of craziness going on in the world, but finally I got it to a point where I think I'm going to consider it done. Now sitting on top of this guy is, I'm going to screw up the name, an Injora, I-N-J-O-R-A, hard body. Yeah, there's good things and bad things about it, but the intent of this video is I'm going to go through first the chassis, it's a kit chassis, and then some of the modifications I've made to it, and then I'm going to go through the body, and then I'm going to also go through my mounting system for it and my lighting system. So I'm gonna pull this guy apart real quick. Well, first off, I'm gonna go through the lighting system. I'm trying something new. It's definitely not my idea, but it's something that I've seen before, and I decided to try it with this one. It seemed like a perfect opportunity. So I've got the lights in front, I got the tail lights, okay? The great thing about it is that I have no wires going from the chassis up to the body, no batteries either. I've got a very custom mounting system on this thing, so when, hopefully you can see this, I pull the body off, put the body on, body off, body on. Okay, so what I have here is two sets of contacts right here, and these are basically the same thing that you would use on a AA battery, and right here I've got the pickup contacts. So basically when you set it down, and there's also a fringe benefit to that too. I'm going to set the body off to the side for right now, and that's my lighting system. So I'm going to take out my battery and go through this guy with you. So this is the kit version of the Team Associated Element RC Enduro. It's not the Sorrento version because it is the kit build. And the kit, I've built my fair share of kits, and it goes together very, very well. Now, of course, when I was building this, I had a specific purpose in mind. This is going to be a Class 1 comp rig. So I had certain things in mind that I was going to do from the get-go. But as far as the build itself, it was pretty straightforward. Not really that much of a problem. I will tell you that there are a couple places where the instructions are either a little misleading or they're a little difficult to follow. One of them is when you put these blocks on, it tells you to clamp them down all the way. Well, the correction to the manual that you don't see tells you not to do that, because if you do, you will crack them. I'm going to be replacing these with aluminum anyway, so it doesn't really matter. I've got brass going out here. But it does not come with wheels, and it does not come with a body. It comes with no electronics. So as it goes together, it's pretty straightforward. Really nothing surprising. The cool thing is they give you options in the kit. One of the things is they give you two sets of links, so you can go with two different wheelbases if you want. Actually, you mix and match the links, so you can do more than that. Also, it gives you three sets of gears for your overdrive on your front end. So, like I said, the instructions, they weren't the worst I've seen. They're not the best I've seen. One of the things that would have been nice is for the overdrive. The manual has a panel, it's about half panel, that shows you how to put this together in a one-to-one. And then you go to the back for a chart, and it tells you how to mix and match the gears to get, I believe it's like 5.5% and 11.5% overdrive. Right now I'm running 11.5%. And it tells you how to, sorry, that was my transmitter. And it tells you how to mix and match them. The problem is that it's not really intuitive. What I would have preferred to see in the manual is for them to give you all 3 instructions done out for each gear set. As it is, once you get the thing put together, you roll the spur gear, and to make sure that the front's spinning faster than the back. You know, fairly confident that I had it together, but really, you know, there's a lot of, you know, hoping that you have it together. Couple of things about this thing. One, this does have a rather deep and very stiff C-channel chassis, which is good. The problem with that, if you want to change out any parts, you pretty much have to take almost the entire frame rail off to get the parts in and out. That's pretty, it's kind of annoying. But the benefit to that is if you have everything put together right, it's a very stiff chassis. And the reason why, especially if you're going to have a comp rig, you want a stiff chassis, is it makes everything else easier to tune. You can tell what everything's doing. If you have a really flexible chassis, basically it'll flex at odd times and you really don't know how to tune it. One of the cool things I like is they do give 2 servo spots, one for the steering servo and another one for a servo winch. Now this is one of my heartaches with this guy, because getting servos in and out of here is a pain. It's not a pleasant process, because basically what you have to do is you have to drop the front axle all the way away so you can get up and in here. What would be a good change, a good mod, is to drop this down probably 6 millimeter, and that way you could take the servos and just drop them on top. In fact, that's what I did with this guy. I've got and I don't know if you can see it, flip it around. So I've got this spool here that I bought, and this servo, and it's one off Amazon, but it's about a 400-ounce servo that I'm using as a servo winch. The top of this guy sticks down a little bit further, so when I put that on, basically that aluminum spool was flat against the suspension. I went ahead and flipped it around, and then it was still touching the upper link mount for the front axle. And it was a point that I could kind of live with it, but it was still really impeding the suspension. So got the bright idea of just dropping it on top, and I've got 5 millimeter spacers going through, and it's got everything lined up with the way I want it. So I'm at this point I'm happy with the way it's mounted, but this could be a lot better of a setup. Other than that, everything went together pretty good. Real quick, the electronics I'm running, I've got the Castle Sidewinder 4. This is not my first choice for an ESC. I like the Castle Mamba X. I love it because you don't have to run a BEC with it. You just plug in and go, and then with like an 1800 kV motor, it's makes things a lot easier. But with every build, I've never built one of these particular chassis before, and I wanted to do something different for the electronics. So I wanted to go with one of these real snazzy Holmes Hobby Outrunner motors, 1800 kV. Now, as you can see, that's not the Outrunner. He sold out of them, and with this whole coronavirus thing, I don't know when he's going to get more in. But that's the reason why I chose this ESC, is for that particular motor. This ESC, I don't really like. It does okay in this combination, but it's only a 2 amp 5 volt BEC in here, which means I have to run an external BEC in this, which, I don't know, simplifying wiring I really don't care to do. However, I will say this stock receiver box is awesome. The only thing I can say about that, it'd be nice if they had 2 slots up here for the wires to go in, and if they blanked one if you don't need it, and just give you different options for putting wires, because right now with the amount of wires I have running through there, it's pretty stuffed. Running a Savic servo. Come back here, this is a Hobby Wing 1060 ESC, and that's what I'm running off of my servo winch. Basically, for my servo winches, I got the internal electronics. I hook up directly to the motor through the small ESC. And then again, here's my lighting. It comes up to these guys right here. One of the things I did, because this is a class 1 comp rig, I didn't like how high it sat up, so I limited these shocks, and these are nice shocks, by the way. I limited these shocks by 10 millimeters, so basically they only have 15 millimeters worth of travel. In their stock form, they have 25 millimeter, which put this guy up a little bit too far. So, I mean, that's mainly the base chassis. Oh, and I've got all my wiring running underneath here. It's really convenient. And then I've got these Dixie Pick Wild Country tires. I've used these before on another class 1 rig, and they hook up really well. So there's no reason not to use them other than they don't look nice, shiny, and new. So as you probably see, I've done quite a few modifications already to this guy. And a lot of it's just to get scale points, and a lot of it just because of the looks that I wanted. The first thing are the bumpers. These are SSD bumpers made for the SCX2. So the back bumper is a aluminum bumper, and if you're familiar with this rig, you'll see that this bumper mount, the chassis brace, is mounted upside down. For everything to line up with the body, I had to flip this, and then I had to flip the bumper on its mount here. And when I did that, that lined it up well with the body. Well, for the front bumper, it has a bumper mount that bolts on right here that is made specifically for the SCX-10.2, and which has the front big hole, and it's got a smaller, like 2 millimeter hole in the back, or 2.5 millimeter, I believe. And without doing any cutting with a Dremel or anything, it just wouldn't fit. I've got a 3D printer, and I've got some feeble skills with Fusion 360. I built another bumper and bolted it on. And the nice thing about the bumper mount and the bumper, they're not one unit. They do detach, and that allows you to do a lot of customization. The only thing I don't like about this bumper, it's a nice low profile bumper, both of them are, and that gives me just a very good approach and departure angle. And then everything's way up high, so as class 1, I've got a really good breakover angle too. So this thing should do really good once I tune it in. The only thing I don't like about this bumper is the fair lead here was sharp. You know, you can tell a nice, clean, machined finish around that, but that's a problem. I'm running wire for a winch line. But even that, I was worried about it getting chafed and getting broke going through that fair lead. So I just took a file and filed around that to smooth off all the edges. So other things I've done, these Reefs RC sliders and pans here, they're pretty nice. They're steel. And to be honest, if I'd only received one, I would think there was something wrong with it, because it's got this really weird angle here that goes down. But I think, I'm fairly certain, because they're both exactly the same, so I think that's really done on purpose to bring it down below the tray so it actually can be used as a slider on what's intended. But when it mounts right up, it basically takes this lip here and puts it on the inside of the body I'm using, which kind of defeats the purpose. So I made these spacers here. These are 5 millimeter, and that gets it out just enough. And I originally did 10 millimeter, and that got them way out here, and it kind of looked like Dumbo, so I brought it back in. Something else that I've done is I've made this chassis brace back here, and a lot of just about everything I've done is available on Thingiverse. My channel is 3D to RC, but just look for it, and I think I'm going to put the links for everything there. But this brace, I made 3 of them. One's got a hole in the middle so that you can attach stuff. The other one is solid, and then this one is specifically made for this Hobby Wing 360. Oh, and I'm using a Spectrum radio system, a DX5R for the electronics. And then I also made this holder for the Sidewinder 4. Now, some people comment, well, you could just, because you have to double sticky it down anyways, and some people say, well, you could just do that to the slider. But originally, I had the original sliders on here, and if I would have had a double sticky, I would have had to pry it back up and then put new sticky down, clean everything up, and then put it back down. This, all I did was unbolt it and then put these guys on and then bolt it back up. Plus, I've got a holder for the power switch, and I've got the power switch lead running underneath it, so everything's kind of slick and contained. Also, there's really nothing on here to attach loose wires coming through. So every one of these guys I've designed, and I've got ones for different ESCs, I put these guys on here to give a place to attach wires. What else to say about the chassis? So far, I haven't really ran it that much, so a lot of tuning, especially with the body and the battery in. I've got to definitely put a lot of preload behind the shocks because they're really, really soft. Just as it sits right here, it's not bad, but the whole mess together is around 10 pounds, so it really wants to squat. It almost goes into a droop configuration, so I don't really want that, so I got to put a lot of preload down. Plus, once I do that, I'm running the stock 30 weight through here, and I might get that up to 40 or 45 weight just to slow down the suspension a little bit. So that is the chassis. You know, everything, I like it because, you know, a lot of things are modular and allow you to configure it in a couple of different ways. So, you know, the designers really thought about it. The steering is from hell. It's at least 50 degrees. Which is just phenomenal. So as a class 1 rig, this guy should do very well. It's a little bit narrow, but that's the chassis. Like I said, I really like it, and I'm looking forward to seeing what I can do with it. So let's get to the body. All right, again, I'm gonna screw up the name. The name is Injora, and they can be found on Amazon. And as far as a stock body goes, or not a stock body, but a hard body goes, this is nice. This, for the most part, rivals anything that you would see on RC four-wheel drive. The seats and that can use some work, and I'm looking at designing and printing off a new interior. But for now, it's got a lot of scale details. This front grille, all this is modular. The back is fairly nice. You got the lights. Here I did up the my own license plate. Put some scale stuff in here. I've got one of these winch anchors. You pull this off, pull it out. I got a holder for the tow rope. Now, the instructions are just good enough, but that being said, they're actually pretty horrible. The nice thing about the kit is that all the screws all the bags are labeled, and the instructions do well enough to tell you where most of the screws go in almost enough detail so that you can get it right. But that's about the best I can say for the instructions. It's got a real funky mounting system, and it doesn't go into any discussion or any diagram on how the mounting system goes. You just have to kind of look at it and kind of figure it out, and that's a little bit annoying. So with this guy, I just went with white and black. The native color is white, so I kind of stuck with that. It's got bezels for all the lights. All these guys, there's 5mm bulbs top and bottom, and then 3mm on the outsides. And then on the back here, it's all 5mm. And the only criticism I can say about that is it'd be nice if it had retainers like the axial lights have. But some shoe goo overnight, everything's in its place. It's all good. And I tried to keep the wiring as clean as possible. and as flat as possible. Eventually on the chassis I want to put wheel wells and whatnot, so I want to keep everything up and out of the way. So I painted all the detail parts. I painted the bed, so it's kind of like got bed liner. This is painted, this is painted, this guy back here is painted, and then the grill is painted. And then everything else is scale details. Like I said, scale body, especially for the price, this thing is really, really nice. My two biggest, there's three, one small criticism and two big criticisms, and then I'll get into the mounting system. So up here on the front, it doesn't, you got a couple lines here that really don't match up to the body. Now they're subtle and you really got to look at them, but once you do, you realize that it's almost like these came off of two different bodies. The lines are pretty good and you've got lines, but it just seems like there's something that should be here. There's lines here that should continue that don't. It's a minor thing and you really have to look at it, but once you see it, you can't unsee it. But it's something I can live with. The door handles, okay? Now, I kicked myself in the butt because I actually read the manual. And the manual said, put them on this way. And they are backwards. And I was really, really annoyed with myself. Well, I was looking at it, and there's no other way to put them on. If you flip them around, the door handles actually face downwards, so that the button's on the correct side. So those things are just made wrong. They're made wrong, and you know, they look kind of goofy, but what are you gonna do? The interior is nothing special. It, for the most part, it's there. You know, it just adds some detail inside, and really, it doesn't look bad. But like I said, I could probably do better. I can design another better interior. The worst part about this are the fender flares. The screws that come with this are awful, are absolutely terrible. Little 2mm screws, and they're coated with something to make them nice and shiny, and that is bad. That coating does not allow you to get a hex driver down in there to drive it in with any authority. Plus, that coating is on the threads themselves, which doesn't allow them to stay in, and it's probably one of the worst things I've ever done with an RC as far as just builds go, because the whole experience was tedious and extremely painful. And once I got one side done, I realized that I wasn't going to do the other side. Not that way. It just wasn't what I wanted. Luckily, I had some of these small cap screw style screws that left over. I think these are actually come off low-C bead locks, the faux bead locks that the mini MRC, mini crawler had. And I had a bunch of them, so I went ahead and used them. And also, a couple people online recommended putting shoe goo to back this as it goes, so I did that. So putting these guys in here, it was just night and day. It was actually a more pleasant experience. Plus, for the end ones, I went ahead and went all the way through and put a nut on the bottom side to hold everything in. So that guy, you know, once you get past that, you know, there's a couple other details, like it's got these two guys right here. I don't know why these are here. Don't know. But other than that, for the money, it is everything all considered. It is a nice body. Mirrors, I'm assuming I'm gonna lose those, and I'm gonna have to reprint them. So the mounting system is really goofy, and I finally figured it out. And there's some parts here, and like I said, they don't tell you. They give you no instruction at all on how to mount the body. So on the front, and I've actually got the front mounting system kind of the way it is. So what these guys mount onto are your chassis braces for your bumpers front and back. And this is pretty much set up the way it is. I made this block so when I set this guy down, it goes down to the same spot every single time, so I don't have to futz with the front end. And then the back end is predicated on the back bumper being in there, which I don't have the back bumper. But basically, the back bumper mounts here, and these go here. And the idea is you would take this guy, bring it in, or bring it in and put it down, and then tighten up the bolts. And once you figure that, and then this guy right here goes in the front. So if you want to adjust it forward and back, this allows you to do that. Again, had to figure this out. So I spent about 3 hours just staring at this on the chassis and looking at different ways to mount it. That's when I decided to go ahead and use the front, because the front lined up right. And then I started getting the ideas for the back. So all I did with the back is I designed and made this just simple block here and mounted it here. And to mount it, first I took the block, put it into the back of the chassis, put these guys where it goes, and then I made, where the hell did that go? I actually made a little template that I printed out. There it is. So I made this guy, printed it out, and with the block mounted in here, I drew around it, and then I lined this guy up so I could get my holes, actually this way, so I can get my holes in the right spot, and then I drilled it. And then I made the holes a little bit bigger so that I could get the, basically have some adjustability once it went in. And it's kind of cheesy, I know, but this is my body pin. So I set the front down, and the front goes right here, and I use these 2 thumb screws to tighten it down. But first, I set this guy in here. This guy comes all the way down, and then this block sits right in the middle here. And then I take this guy, and there's a hole that runs all the way through. It's printed in there. And I run this hex wrench all the way through, and it holds the body. And then I tighten down these thumb screws, and we're ready to rock and roll. It kind of concerned me at first because before I did the electronics, this guy could kind of rattle in there. And I was trying to find a way to actually lock it in somehow. But when I put these guys in here, I've got to push it down. This goes in, and sometimes it's a pain in the butt, but it'll go all the way in. And once it does, the pressure that these guys exert against the body basically locks this guy in. It's not too difficult to pull out, but it's not going to come out on its own. So that is my Element RC Enduro kit. Seeing as how we have about 6 inches of fresh snow today, I'm probably going to be a little bit before I get this guy on my crawler course and I actually can start crawling around with it. But I'm looking forward to it. It looks like it's going to be a fun truck to run. First time I roll it over, I'm going to cry a little bit of a tear. But competition-wise, it is heavy. Like I said, it's around 10 pounds. And you can see I definitely have to stiffen up the shocks. I'll probably go with a heavier shock oil. Because, yeah, it droops about 5 millimeter. In the front, it droops about 7 to 8 millimeter because it's just barely off the shock. So I definitely have to put those preloads down some more. But yeah, this thing should be between the steering, everything else, it should be a fun truck. So I'm looking forward to running it. So if you have any questions, let me know. I know that was a lot of stuff, and I think I've hit all the points that I wanted to hit on this guy. But yeah, let me know if you have any questions, and hopefully here in a couple weeks I'm out on our local comp courses and ripping it up.